Today, let's talk about the government agency that's in charge of making sure all this stuff is fair and legit and that it works for both candidates and voters. So, we're going to take a look at the role of the Federal Election Commission in regulating elections, but mostly in regulating the donating and spending of campaigns. The FEC was created in 1974. So this was a part of a bunch of laws passed right after Watergate to try to clean up government, try to limit corruption as much as possible. But this Federal Election Campaign Act of 1974 created the Federal Election Commission, but also set some rules, which meant that candidates had to tell us who contributed money to their campaign. This is important. This is public information, so we can find out who are the donors to campaigns, because that way we would at least be able to make sure that it didn't look like donors were being rewarded with the best jobs and things like that. We need to know how the campaigns spent their money, so they have to disclose that information. So that way we can monitor campaign spending and make sure that when people donate money to a candidate, that money actually gets spent on trying to win the election and it's not like buying new cars for their kids and stuff like that. There are also limits placed on political contributions. So there's a maximum amount that you can donate to a candidate, and that makes elections a little more equal for all of us. Not everybody's going to have the ability to donate thousands and thousands of dollars to a campaign, but this puts us on a little more of an even playing field. And this, of course, like we said, established a Federal Election Commission that would have an ongoing role in regulating elections. The contribution limits that were established by this law made it so that if you want to donate to a candidate, the maximum amount you can donate to that candidate is $2,500. So even though not everyone's going to have the ability to give $2,500 to a candidate, that does set a pretty low limit for very wealthy people. So that means that campaigns have to look beyond just a couple of wealthy funders in order to be able to sustain themselves. If businesses or interest groups want to donate to a candidate, that has to be a little more transparent also. So that's why they would have to create political action committees in order to donate. The political action committee donation has a maximum of $5,000. So there are limits here on the amounts of donations, and that's meant to make sure that wealthy donors and wealthy businesses and interest groups don't dominate campaigns in a way that they can control the kinds of policies that campaigns will promote. The FEC's job is to monitor and enforce election laws for all federal elections. So this is monitoring all of the elections for president and for Congress. They track all political donations and they track political spending, and they make sure that that's information that's accessible to us. So regular people can look this information up and see the political contributions and see how the campaigns spend their money. This plays a big role in exposing corruption in political campaign spending. They'll bring charges against campaigns that spend their money in illegal ways. Since it's a commission, we know that means it's a group of leaders. And since it's dealing with elections, it's important that we find a system that's going to be fair for Republicans and Democrats. So here's how this works. This is a body made up of 6 people. There's 3 Republicans and there's 3 Democrats that are always on the Federal Election Commission. If they're going to change anything, 4 votes are required to agree. So that means there has to be some level of agreement between Republicans and Democrats in order for the FEC to change any policies. It's also important that this is an independent regulatory agency. So other than getting to appoint the members when their time is up, the president does not get to tell the FEC what to do. The president does not get to run the election commission. If so, the president would be able to rig elections in their own favor. Congress does not get to control the FEC. The Congress does control their budget, but beyond that, Congress doesn't really get to tell them what to do either, because the members of Congress would make it easy on themselves to get reelected. There's another really important thing that the FEC could potentially do. This designed a system where we would publicly fund elections. So elections would be funded by money from taxpayers. And this is a voluntary part of doing your taxes. When you do your taxes, it will ask if you want to put $5 in the election campaign fund. Now, what would happen here is that that fund would be used to pay for people's campaigns, but they would have to agree to spending limits. So in order to get free money to run their campaign, all they had to do was agree to spending limits on their campaign. But every candidate, since this law has been passed, all the candidates have decided that they could do better on their own. They've all ignored the fact that this was there and that they could use it, and they've raised their own money so that they won't be restricted by the spending limits. So we said there were spending limits on how much you could donate to a particular campaign, but people immediately found their way around it. They immediately found a loophole. And that's where we find the difference between hard money and soft money. Hard money is what we mean. That means that there is a limit on how much you can donate, because this is a donation that you make directly to a campaign. So the current FEC limit on hard money donations is $2,500 per election. That can be some for the primary, and it can be another $2,500 later for separate elections. But it's hard money because there is a hard cap on how much can be spent. Soft money is the first way that people got around these spending limits. So I may not be able to donate to the candidate that I want, but if that candidate is a Democrat, I can give unlimited money to the Democratic Party, and they're going to end up spending it on the candidate that I like. So there's not really control over who the money goes to, but you could have given unlimited amounts of money to the political party to spend on campaigns on their behalf. So this is the difference between hard money and soft money. Hard money has a limit. Soft money has no limit. Hard money goes directly to the candidate. Soft money goes to the candidate's political party, and they're probably going to spend it on the candidate. But with soft money, you may be donating because you really like one candidate, and the party may choose to spend that money on a different candidate. All right, that's it for campaigns and campaign laws and all the money dealing with campaigns. So let's take a look at our bigly ideas here while President Trump shares a hug with Tom Brady. The big things we want to do today, we want to make sure that we can describe the different sources of funding for a campaign, particularly the difference in donors, right? Remember that you can get a lot of money from one wealthy donor, or it's probably just as easy to get a little bit of money from several regular donors on the internet. We want to talk about what's causing the rising costs of campaigns, how the costs of campaigns have risen over time and why that is. We want to be able to compare PACs and super PACs. So we want to make sure that we understand the difference between a political action committee, which donates right to a candidate, and a super PAC, which is going to spend money independently that would help a candidate. We want to make sure we understand what the Federal Election Commission does. And one of the biggest things today, this is one of our court cases that we have to know for the AP exam. We want to make sure that we can understand the Supreme Court's ruling in Citizens United versus the FEC. All right, not only is that it for money in campaigns, but that is it for all of our stuff about voting and elections for now. We're going to shift over to our very last linkage institution, and we're going to talk about interest groups. And we're going to talk about how interest groups try to influence the policy that the government makes.